Chloe is a child in care who, aged 11, alleges that she's been raped.
How is an 11-year-old putting herself at risk when there's an older male preying on her?
The mayor had said there was no reports and there was no indication.
How is the mayor not seeing what is actually happening? They're all part of a massive cover-up.
Child O, she writes a letter to a friend, describes being abducted, taken to a park, beaten and raped.
They didn't even keep the letter. You've just got rid of evidence. DNA's handed over and it's still not enough.
She actually went on to end her own life.
So I tried to kill myself. I couldn't deal with it anymore, walking past my perpetrators every single day.
Girls as young as 14, sold on the streets. Some of those girls were on crack cocaine.
So many police officers in this city, not one of you are protecting us.
They pose a serious risk to children. They believed they were untouchable.
They are getting away with it. They are untouchable. What about the live girls that are living with it every day?
Okay, Callum, where does this start? What was the first grooming gang that you became aware of?
Well, Zak, for me, it was Newham in East London. A national newspaper reported that 4 girls had come forward and said that they'd been raped by a group operating around a McDonald's in Stratford.
The weird thing about this story is that we couldn't really find much out about it when it went to court. So you put in some information requests and it came back that there were 18 potential victims and 3 men that were charged. But we don't actually know if any of them were prosecuted for sex offences.
Now, that's the only one that we could find that the Met had commented on publicly in the context of grooming gangs, but there's a lot more to this, isn't there, Zak?
Yeah, when you go beneath the surface, there's actually a lot more evidence. One of the examples is that whenever a child dies and they've been in the care of social services or they've had responsibility for them, they have to do a report about what went wrong. It's known as a serious case review.
Now, these serious case reviews, we realise when we're going through them, they're actually filled with potential evidence of grooming gang activity in London. And one of the ones that stood out for us was under the alias of Child O, and that was in Haringey.
It was believed that Child O was raped by men in Finsbury Park at the age of 12. She writes a letter to a friend where she describes being abducted, taken to a park, beaten and raped.
That same letter mentions her being raped by numerous men, being given drugs and alcohol, and having numerous pregnancies and miscarriages. Now, for some reason, the police don't keep this letter, and instead they say a specialist officer should speak to her to find out, quotes, what her mental state of mind is. Now, the tragic thing about this case is that at the age of 16, Child O ends her own life.
Child O is just the start. Because when we started looking at this, we found many more cases, like Chloe in Croydon, who kills herself, aged 17 in 2020. Chloe is a child in care who, aged 11, alleges that she's been raped. Now, the professionals around her describe her as spiteful and defiant and suggest that she's been putting herself at risk by associating with older men.
A year later, Sylvia is found dead in Kingston in southwest London from an overdose on drugs. Now, the review into Sylvia's death shows there were several concerns about sexual exploitation from the age of 13, and she'd reported several sexual assaults, and there were concerns around her going missing and having relationships with so-called older boyfriends.
She's repeatedly arrested with men that were known to pose a risk for children. One of them gets her pregnant, age 16, the other one sexually exploits her.
And when we actually continue digging into these serious case reviews, we realise that they don't just happen when, for example, like Child O, they take their own life or they die from a drug overdose like Sylvia. They can also happen when there's serious failings that led to their abuse.
So one of these is Olivia in Lambeth just 3 years ago. Now, she goes missing 25 times and reports being raped 4 times from the age of 13. She has a miscarriage and is diagnosed with a sexually transmitted infection.
Now, age 17, Olivia is found in a hotel room with 6 men. She's been given drugs and alcohol, and she reports that 2 of the men raped her and filmed the attack.
Over in Hillingdon in 2014, we found a different kind of serious case review. This one refers to a police investigation known as Operation Baker that actually resulted in a number of convictions.
Essentially, as police built the case, it became clear that there had been serious safeguarding failures over the years. These 3 girls who were the victims, aged between 13 and 17, had repeatedly told professionals over the years about sexual assaults, and one of them had said at the age of 12 that they'd had sex with an older man. Now that is statutory rape.
Other children said that they were offered drugs and alcohol to have sex with men in the girls' homes, and that the children had been involved in prostitution. The thing about these serious case reviews is we don't actually know how many of them might exist because there is no standardised form for any of these local authorities to make these things public.
And what's become clear to us, that Operation Baker wasn't the first time that Hillingdon Council had concerns about a grooming gang in the area. Back in 2017, 2 national newspapers named Levi Bellfield, a notorious serial killer, and Suraj Garu as being part of a grooming gang operating in the area.
The articles were based on a report that was done by the local council's sexual exploitation manager, Debbie Weissing. Now, in that report, Debbie identifies 7 men that are potentially sex offenders and 17 alleged victims. The most shocking part of the report, though, is that while Bellfield's been sent away and can't do anyone any harm, the rest of the group are still at large. They pose a serious risk to children, and Debbie wrote that they believed that they'd done nothing wrong and that they were untouchable.
It was reported that Bellfield had a raping room in his Hamworth flat and that the group used GHB to drug the victims and then rape them while they were unconscious. And there was evidence at one of the hearings for Bellfield's murder victim that he'd filmed himself having sex with the 14-year-old daughter of another member of the group.
When you started investigating this, Callum, you went to all of these local authorities and asked them about grooming gangs, didn't you?
Yeah, and when I went to them, there was one FOI department that came back and said, yeah, we have had a case, and that was Hounslow Council. Now, when I went to speak to frontline workers in Hounslow, one of them told me that girls have been abused in hotels in the borough as recently as 2017. Now, when I went to try and verify those claims, I scoured through Hounslow Council documents and I came across some pretty shocking stuff.
Yeah, you have to remember this is at a time when the Mayor and the Met are saying that there are no reports or indications of grooming gangs in London.
Well, then I found this. Concerns in Hounslow were so high in 2015 that Hounslow Council put out a special edition of the Hounslow Matters magazine that went out to 100,000 residents, and it focused on a case study involving a young woman.
It's about a 15-year-old called Jamie who is skipping school when she's approached by a guy in his 20s called Tom telling her she's gorgeous. He gives her vodka, cigarettes, and then he starts to abuse her. Then he gives her harder drugs, coerces her to have sex with other men. He then films it and then uses that to blackmail her when she wants to leave.
Jamie is so scared that she continues to be abused by these men. But then she goes to a teacher. They refer her to Hounslow's child safeguarding team. Fortunately, she's able to break away, but we couldn't find anything about the perpetrators being brought to justice.
What we do know is that after this article was shared with 100,000 Hounslow residents, the council reports that 2 children came forward saying that they're being exploited. And that wasn't the only time that the council discussed the issue. Documents we found refer to a specific group of males who were grooming young girls in the area.
Now, that council report says police are investigating these males and that they're checking on children in care if there's any safeguarding concerns. But Hounslow Council aren't the first local authority in London to have concerns about a group of men grooming young girls. No, in Lewisham in 2002, we found a report from Imperial College London that looked into this issue as well.
Their research was actually motivated by reports of inappropriate relationships between groups of Eastern European men in their 20s and girls between the ages of 13 and 15. It says girls that went to Mallory School in 2002 were being approached by men in Lewisham town centre, befriended by them, and that the girls referred to these men as their boyfriends.
Now, Imperial College also found relationships between the men and pupils from Sydenham Girls' School, and the people who wrote the report said that these girls were vulnerable and under little supervision.
Several of the girls who became frightened by the relationships say that they were introduced to older men and were offered monetary gifts, and that they were also encouraged to introduce other children to the men. According to Imperial, these relationships ended when the antisocial behaviour team from the council became involved, parents were informed, and the police started doing patrols of Lewisham town centre. The thing is, we don't have any details about the exploitation itself or what, if any, consequences the men faced.
Now, 2 years before that, Lewisham also made national newspaper headlines when it emerged that children's homes in the borough were being targeted by a pimp called Martin Malone. So I've got a local news report here that is on the trial, and it describes how Malone made the children pass initiation tests which involved providing sexual services for him. Girls as young as 14 being sold on the streets of Paddington, Soho, Streatham. Some of those girls were on crack cocaine, and after Malone was convicted, police described him as a, quote, sexual Fagin.
When we started looking at other potential grooming gang cases from this year, which we should also say is not going to be looked at by the Met Police in their big review of all these historic potential cases, we found a lot more. The difference was that back then they used to refer to it as child prostitution. Thankfully, that term has come out of use because the children are now rightly recognised as victims.
Well, the term was used back then, and actually in 2002, Bernardo's, a charity, was so concerned about it, they did a major poster campaign on the London Underground.
Bernardo's does some media around the campaign, and one of the people that they put up to speak to journalists is a project leader from Islington in North London. And she says that they are so overwhelmed with their services that they are just limiting who they work with to 13 and 14-year-old girls.
Yeah, this is what she says at the time in the article. Social services and the police were telling us the sexual exploitation wasn't happening, even though we could clearly see it was. She actually said that we're deluged with referrals, we've got kids that are runaways, that are missing, being groomed on the internet. She even goes on to say that pimps are actively looking for kids on the streets of London so they can go and sell them.
When you started to look at it, we went back and we found lots of other cases that weren't referred to as grooming gangs, but when we showed them to the experts, that they said that they fit the same patterns.
In Redbridge, in East London, in 2011. So this case in Redbridge was not long after the Rochdale gang was exposed, and it involved a trial that was termed back then a child sex ring. Now, one of the girls who was the victim in that trial said that she'd been prostituted to 3 or 4 men a day.
The 17-year-old was one of 6 alleged teenage victims, 2 of whom were living in supported living flats. Now, the child prostitution charges, the men were ultimately cleared, but 4 of them went down for rape and sexual assault.
And the last case worth mentioning is from the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse. So the East London Borough of Tower Hamlets was looked at as a part of this process, and they actually found 5 victims that fell within their definition.
Yeah, I mean, looking at these cases, you might forget that these are real people and real victims. So I think it's important that we speak to someone that actually understands what it's like to be one of these girls. So let's speak to a grooming gang survivor.
Jade, can you just tell us a bit about you?
I'm Jade and I'm a grooming gang survivor. I am at the moment trying to sort out the grooming gangs in all different areas, trying to spread awareness and clear my name.
When you seen all this stuff happening in London, did it surprise you? What was your reaction to it?
It hasn't surprised me. What has surprised me is how quiet it's been in this area. It's not very, it's all up north and it's never down south. So yeah, I'm more shocked of how quiet it is, and I've obviously read some of these case files, and it is very shocking of how the professionals have dealt with it, the police, the social services, how quiet and how much they don't believe the girls is what I'm really shocked about. You've
been in their shoes a bit. What did you feel like when you're reading some of their stories?
It's just all very close to home. Grooming happens in all different ways, but it's all the same, if that makes sense. They're vulnerable girls, older men buying gifts. It's the police, the girls coming forward and the police either saying they're troubled kids or they're in a mental state. Social services not believing them and wanting to call them child prostitutes. It's just all the same throughout, and all the years, there's all different years throughout. And it's like, how is it from early 90s up until late 2000s is it happening still? The Lambeth case, they got given a child abduction warning notice. The girl was missing 25 times. She reported 2 rapes. She had 4 physical assaults, and yet you get a child abduction warning notice. That is no justice for these poor girls with what they're going through. This stays with them for the rest of their life. They have nightmares and everything.
Yeah, because like with this one in Kingston, she kept being arrested with the guys that were exploiting her, but it just didn't seem to have an impact on the exploitation.
I've been in that exact same boat. I got arrested for apparently taking girls out with me, even though I was being abused myself. So that, it doesn't matter how much you scream and shout. The system just don't want to believe you, which is obviously what we're trying to work on, because it's happening really, really bad still to this day. We want girls to be listened to. So if there's 65 girls coming to you and saying that this is what's happening, why are you saying it's not happening when there's 65 girls coming to you saying it is? So instead of saying, no, we don't believe you, or no, look at their mental state, no, they keep running away, they're troubled kids, how about look at the area, look at where they're saying that the pickup points are, go there, like patrol the area, and if you see something happening, stop the operation before it gets any further, instead of keep letting it happen and letting these poor girls getting abused. It's like the system is part of it all because they don't want to listen.
This was the one that, like, for me and Callum, it was just so shocking because it was like she'd written this whole letter to a friend, and she'd put in everything about like how she kept being taken to the park. The police didn't keep the letter.
They didn't even keep the letter. So why? Why have you not put any of that in for investigation? You've just got rid of evidence. Why is it okay for an individual police officer to decide that there's no further action? It should have been forward and been a massive investigation for it to come to that. Why are they not looking into the men that she's talking about instead of, they just want to look into her mental state instead? She's probably in a mental state because of what these men are putting her through. This is what is sickening. She's tried to harm herself, her mum shouted out, and they're still not listening. Like, what more do we have to do, screaming and shouting, for us to be believed? There's been times where DNA's handed over and it's still not enough evidence. What do we need to do to be believed?
Because, that's one of the things, is that lots of the young girls would get pregnant and have miscarriages, and then that's obviously like evidence. There's another case where it's saying that an 11-year-old was sexually active with an older adult. She's not sexually active with an older adult. She's being raped by this older adult because an 11-year-old don't know how to be sexually active. She shouldn't even know what being sexually active is. So how is that being classed as her being in a relationship with an older man and putting herself at risk? She don't know the meaning of any of that. So how is an 11-year-old putting herself at risk when there's an older male preying on her?
When you were talking about Child O before and the letter that she wrote, she actually went on to end her own life, and we've seen that with a number of these cases.
That's happened so many times. So many times I tried to kill myself. Hence why I'm living where I am now. I had kids and I couldn't deal with it anymore, walking past my perpetrators every single day. What we go through is horrible. I'm still trying to get justice now, 18 years down the line. And it's just a daily fight every day with your mental health, and yet these men get to walk around every day with their family living happy. It's really not fair. Something seriously needs to start being done about it.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the things, when you look at it on this board, don't see a lot of perpetrators, you actually see a lot of victims or stories about it. Like you say, this one, that's like 65 girls, isn't it?
Yeah, because no one's getting justice. Us girls aren't getting no justice. They're not getting the times. Half of them are being NFA'd. They're not even being charged. And it's an absolute joke.
Some of these cases we only know about because the girls took their own lives or died of a drug overdose. We wouldn't even know about the Haringey one or about the Croydon one or the Kingston one if the girls hadn't
They get you so wrapped up into it that you're either scared to open your mouth, or when you do and don't get believed so many times, you just stop opening your mouth. And it is so embarrassing to speak about it when you're going through it. It's not a nice thing to talk about. So it's understandable why these girls aren't shouting out. I've given DNA and I've made reports and got bullied to drop them, and I got arrested for that. I got arrested for wasting police time. Did anything happen to my perpetrators? No. As I said, you could give DNA, you could scream and shout. This is the reason why we don't scream and shout anymore, is because all of the professionals around us that are supposed to be looking after us don't believe us. So how are you meant to fight a system like that? It just angers me. It just angers me that so many people are getting away with so much wrongness. Like, and because they keep getting away with it, they're just going to carry on doing it. Because they believe that they're untouchable.
Yeah, as interesting that you use those words, because when we looked at this case in Hillingdon, that was based on a report, and she literally said, like, so Levi Bellfield, he's not coming out of prison, you know, because of the murders, but they said the rest of the gang that was out there considered themselves untouchable. Yeah,
and this is the thing, where because they see themselves as untouchable, they basically are, because they're not getting no criminal justice brought to them. So they are getting away with it. They are untouchable. So, as I said, there's more and more girls going to keep going through it, because these men are not being brought to justice. Levi Bellfield, he should be having some sort of accountability for that. Even though he is serving a life sentence, he should still be held accountable for the things that he's done.
Well, and also there's still girls that are alive that are out there that
are still suffering because of him, so they need their justice too.
One of the reasons we started looking at this was because the mayor had said there was no reports and there was no indication, right? So this was just me and Callum basically trying to find, and we found all of this, and then we're just two journalists looking at stuff that's publicly available, not even going like another deeper.
But this is what I'm saying, if two journalists could come up with all of this from nothing, how is the mayor not seeing what is actually happening in his city when two journalists have just come up with all of this? Facts. That's happening in London. How is the mayor not seeing that? Because they're all part of a massive cover-up that we all need to get to the bottom of. Because, as I said, us girls are suffering day in, day out. We shut our eyes and we're having bad dreams. It is happening, and if anything, it's probably getting worse. Because if they got away with all of that for so many years, like years ago, it must just be getting more and more brutal. Because if you're getting away with something, you're just going to take that next step. If I could get away with that, I'm not going to get away with this. Do you know what I mean? So it's probably going to be even more brutal out there now. And the way that these little girls dress now, I was in a tracksuit when it was happening. So it's scary. It is so scary. And all I want to say to these young girls are, if an older man comes to you in a nice flash car and thinks that you're attractive, please just ignore it. Because getting in a fancy car, oh look, he's attracted to me. We do thrive for that when we haven't got a dad or anyone that loves us, and some girls have got daddy issues. We do thrive for that older man attention, and when you're driving over to us in a nice car and things like that, we do thrive for that, and that's how you get drawn into it so easy. Do not do it. Do not accept no alcohol of older men. Do not accept cigarettes of any just don't, because that is the way you're going to get drawn into it so easy.
How do you think you can get that message to girls, like say in London? Like how would you actually go about doing that?
I reckon there should be more campaigns in schools with that age group, and sex education. You should be learning about sexual exploitation instead of learning about sexual activity at that age. Learn about the risks, and sexual exploitation is definitely a must in schools.
Just give us a sense of like what goes through these girls' heads when they report something, and then instead of the action being taken, they're feeling like what's it feel like when that happens?
It rips your heart out. It makes you feel absolutely sick. And then when you're at that young, vulnerable state, it makes you start believing them. Like, makes you start believing the professionals. So like when I used to report it and they'd be like, but you keep going back. That's in my head now. Well, I'll keep going back, so I must be in the wrong. And then when my social worker's asking me if I'm a prostitute, well, I must be a prostitute. If a professional's asking me and none of you are believing me and taking these cases forward, then that just must be how it is. So then you just start normalising to it.
Because from what you're saying as well, that it's almost like they put it into your head what this stuff from the outside of them saying that to you made you feel
Well, yeah, if I've given DNA to the police, I've come to you giving you names, statements, DNA, and you don't believe me, then obviously I'm not telling the truth because you're police officers. Do you know what I mean? You helped me find the truth, basically. I've given you DNA, you're now going to help me find the man who done it. They come to me and told me he was a 51-year-old male, gave me his name, I didn't even know his name, and still told me it was NFA. I was 14. Why do I want a 51-year-old man touching me? Obviously, you don't ever go back to the police then. It happened to me loads of times after. Do you think I ever went to the police again? No, because they never helped me. They never helped me. When your social worker sitting there asking you, are you prostituting yourself? Are you selling yourself for drugs and alcohol at the age of 14, 15? You then start believing that's what you're doing. Well, no, I've come to you thinking that something's happening wrong to me, and then you're turning it going, are you sure it's not prostitution? Are you sure you're not selling yourself for that? So then you start believing it because it's a professional telling a child that's what you're doing.
Already it's like you're made to feel invisible, but then when London was saying that we don't even have this here, like what were they saying to you? Or like what was that like?
They really do want to scream out, do you know what I mean? But as I said, it's a hard thing to come forward. So it just eats my heart. Just eats my heart knowing that London is a massive place, and in that massive place, all the girls that are probably being unlistened to, like look, you're reassessing 9,000 cases. That's not all the cases. So that's 9,000 potential girls that are with their heart ripped out right now.
Because it's the worst thing that ever happened to them as well.
Yeah.
Or things like
that's the worst thing you could do to any woman. We all feel so shit about ourselves. And I have done for 18 years. And these girls, some girls are still feeling it 30 years down the line.
I remember early on when I was looking into this that I spoke to other journalists who would have been covering these sorts of cases in the 2000s. And they said to me, like, oh, we didn't like to go cover these cases because it was just too horrendous.
Yeah.
Yeah, how does it make you feel when you kind of hear that maybe from reporters?
The stories are horrendous because what is happening to these girls are horrendous. So we might need more journalists that have got a stronger heart that can actually take listening to these stories and keep fighting it. Because it is hard. I can understand why some people might want to walk away from it, because even me just reading these 12 cases done my head in, do you know, like, because it's heartbreaking for all of these people, absolutely heartbreaking. So we need stronger hearted people out there that actually want to fight for these girls. Because I feel like once you hear, someone will hear a harrowing story and be like, oh no, I can't deal with this. No, this is why we're getting let down. We need more people to keep fighting for us, which is, I feel, is happening. More people are being aware, more people are noticing, but not enough. Why do these poor girls have to suffer so much before they get help? Someone reported 61 occasions and then they had to ask to be moved. If someone's reported 61 occasions, why are they asking to be moved? Move them out of the area. Move them away from the situation. Because these are why the girls kill themselves. Because they walk past their perpetrators every day, tell people that that's what's happening. Why are they not moving them? Move them away from the situation. Yeah, do like patrolling. If the girls are saying things or are naming pickup points or are naming the men, please look into it. Please look into it. Please patrol the areas, because these girls aren't lying. These girls are shouting out for help. Even them going missing 25 times, being reported missing, that's crying out for help. Sometimes it's like attention sinking. No, it ain't. They are crying out for help. They need help. Yeah, as I've said before, child and prostitution, how does that go in one word? I really don't know.
You know, that's always the thing that like comes up for me time and again, which is, it's not that like there's no evidence of it happening. It's that it's just there. It's hiding. It's always hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, in plain sight. Yeah, the poor girls are still getting taken away. So it's like, where in this country, where in this city are we safe? You've got so many social services, so many police officers in this city, but yet not one of you are protecting us.
You make such an important point about the areas and then people being stuck around their perpetrators,
Yeah.
like how difficult.
I have it in my care files that I got moved out the area and I said to them, please can I stay here? I don't want to be back in High Wycombe. They moved me back to High Wycombe. Even though I'm begging not to go back there. So like the care in the social care, there is the care should be taken out of it because there's no care there at all.
What we found out during our investigation is that this man, Levi Bellfield and Suraj Garu, named in a report from a social services manager as having a grooming gang that was operating in Hillingdon at the time.
Yeah, but I didn't even know until I read this case. I didn't know that he was part of a grooming.
He's one of the most notorious serial killers in the country, living definitely, and the fact that he was part of a grooming gang is just flies under the radar.
Yeah, it's disgusting. It is disgusting, and this is what angers me: is that why grooming gangs are so hidden, like in the media and everywhere. Like no one wants to talk about it. No one wants to talk about it, but it's the worst case that's happening.
It's almost worse, isn't it? Because it's like they want to talk about the dead girls and the murders.
Yeah, but what about the live girls that are living with it every day? The ones that are actually feeling that pain every single day. It's just these poor girls with, including me, that are sitting here with no justice. I just don't know. I actually have no words. I have no words because it just angers me so much.
You spent time with Maggie Oliver. Like how much does it cry out for is she just a one-off we obviously need more people like
we need more Maggie Olivers, yeah we do. She is absolutely amazing. The work she does, she walked out of her own job because of this, because she see how the failures in the police with it. Do you know what I mean? So even an ex-police officer having to walk away from her job because she sees the failures is saying something.
Her foundation has helped you?
Oh yeah. I literally, from the day I rang them, they have been non-stop support for me. For years I've been trying to get mental help of the NHS and everything, and NHS is just useless. But since being in the Maggie Oliver Foundation, I've managed to do a trauma workshop. I'm on a 12-week trauma course. I've had 2 years of emotional support phone calls. So yeah, if you need help, I would shout out to them.